The twin moons of New Haven cast silver light across the colony's central plaza. Lanterns hung from every building, swaying gently in the evening breeze. Children ran between the food stalls, their laughter echoing off the prefabricated walls that had become home to 340,000 souls. Corporal Jiho Kim stood at the edge of the celebration, his dress uniform feeling too tight around the collar. He was 24 years old and had spent the last 3 years protecting this colony from absolutely nothing. Pirates avoided this sector. Hostile aliens never came this far out. His biggest accomplishment had been rescuing a farmer's cat from a grain silo. "You look nervous," Somin Choi said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of sweet rice punch. She was beautiful in her blue dress, her hair pinned up with small, star-shaped clips that caught the moonlight. "I'm not nervous," Jiho lied, taking the cup. His hand shook slightly. Somin smiled. She taught elementary school at the colony's main education center. Her students loved her because she made learning feel like an adventure. Jiho loved her because she made everything feel possible. They had been together for 2 years, and tonight he was going to ask her the most important question of his life. "The governor is about to give his speech," Somin said, nodding toward the central stage where Governor Minho Lee was adjusting the microphone. Governor Lee was 52 years old, with gray at his temples and smile lines around his eyes. He had been a diplomat on Earth before retiring to colonial administration. He believed deeply that humanity could spread across the stars peacefully, coexisting with the dozens of alien species they had encountered. "Friends, neighbors, fellow dreamers," Governor Lee began, his voice carrying across the plaza. 15 years ago, the first colonists landed on this world. They built homes from shipping containers. They grew crops in unfamiliar soil. They looked up at these twin moons and decided this was worth fighting for. The crowd applauded. Jiho noticed Dr. Eunji Park standing near the front with her 2 children. Her son, Hyunwoo, was 8 years old, clutching a toy starship in his small hands. The boy wanted to be a pilot someday. Dr. Park was the colony's chief medical officer, 38 years old, and she had delivered half the children currently running through the plaza. "We came to the stars, not as conquerors but as neighbors," Governor Lee continued. "We extend our hand in friendship to all species we meet. We believe in peace, in cooperation, in building something better than what we left behind." Jiho felt the small box in his pocket. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing fancy. Colonial life didn't leave much room for luxury. But Somin had once told him she didn't need diamonds or gold. She just needed him. The speech ended with more applause. Music started playing. Something traditional, mixed with modern colony beats. People began dancing. Children chased each other around the fountain that marked the plaza's center. "Walk with me?" Jiho asked Somin. They left the celebration, following the path toward the Eastern Gardens. New Haven specialized in agricultural exports, and the gardens showcased what they could grow in this alien soil. Earth flowers bloomed alongside native plants with purple leaves and silver stems. "I've been thinking," Jiho said as they walked, "about transferring to the main fleet." Somin stopped walking. "What? Not right away," he added quickly. "Maybe in a year or 2. See more of the galaxy. There's a whole universe out there, and I'm stuck watching farmers plant wheat." "You protect people," Somin said quietly. "That matters. Nothing ever happens here. We're so far from everything that we might as well be invisible." Somin looked up at the stars. Thousands of them filled the sky, more than you could ever see from Earth with its light pollution and crowded orbits. "Maybe being invisible is good. Maybe that means we're safe." Jiho took her hands in his. "I want to give you more than this. More than a quiet colony where nothing happens. I want adventures. Excitement. Something that matters. You matter," Somin said. "Right here. Right now. You matter to me." Jiho pulled out the box and opened it. The simple ring gleamed in the moonlight. "Somin Choi, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak, and Jiho slipped the ring onto her finger. They kissed while the twin moons watched overhead, and for a moment everything was perfect. The alarm started wailing 30 minutes later. Jiho's communicator buzzed urgently. He pulled away from Salmon, reading the message with growing horror. I have to go. Get to the shelters. What's happening? Ships. Unknown ships. A lot of them. He ran toward the defense headquarters, his dress shoes slipping on the smooth stone paths. Other Defense Force members were running too, all converging on the command center. The celebration had turned to confusion. Parents grabbed their children. Governor Lee was on his communicator, calling for calm. The command center was chaos. Screens showed radar contacts. Dozens of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. The ships were large, military configurations, moving in attack formations. Identify them, ordered Commander Sung, the Defense Force's ranking officer. Velthara, the sensor operator said. Velthara War Fleet. The room went silent. Everyone had heard of the Velthara, a reptilian species from the galactic northeast, aggressive and expansionist. They had skirmished with human scout ships before, but always backed down when faced with military vessels. New Haven had no military vessels. Just 12 automated defense platforms and 8 patrol craft designed for rescue operations. Open communications, Commander Sung ordered. Governor Lee entered the command center, still wearing his celebration clothes. Let me talk to them. We can resolve this peacefully. The main screen flickered to life, showing a Velthara commander. He was large, covered in green-brown scales, with yellow eyes that reflected no warmth. Ceremonial blades hung from his armor, each one marked with kill tallies. This is Governor Minho Lee of New Haven Colony, the governor said, his voice steady. We are a peaceful settlement. We have no quarrel with the Velthara Empire. Please state your intentions. The defense platforms opened fire first. 12 automated weapons stations, designed to handle asteroids and small pirate vessels, threw everything they had at the approaching Velthara fleet. Their railguns sent metal slugs screaming through the void at a fraction of light speed. Missiles ignited, leaving trails of fire against the darkness. Jiho watched from his patrol craft as the first Velthara frigate exploded. The defensive fire had caught it by surprise, tearing through its shields and rupturing its hull. Atmosphere vented into space, flash freezing into crystal clouds. We got one, someone shouted over the comm channel. Stay focused, Jiho said, though his own hands were shaking on the controls. His patrol craft was armed with 2 light plasma cannons and a handful of missiles. It was meant for rescue operations, not warfare. Around him, 7 other patrol craft tried to form something resembling a battle line. The Velthara fleet was massive. 200 warships, from small frigates to massive battle cruisers. They moved with military precision, their formations tight and professional. These were not raiders or pirates. This was an invasion fleet. A second Velthara frigate died as multiple defense platforms concentrated their fire. Then a third, crippled and spinning, fell toward New Haven's atmosphere, where it would burn up on entry. For a brief moment, Jiho felt hope. Maybe they could hold. Maybe reinforcements would arrive. Maybe this was all a terrible nightmare. Then the Velthara fleet returned fire. The defense platforms died in seconds. The Velthara battlecruisers carried weapons that made the colony's defenses look like children's toys. Beams of coherent energy sliced through metal and circuitry. Explosions bloomed in orbit like deadly flowers. Platform 7 is gone. Platform 3 is gone. Platform 11 is offline, the communications officer reported, his voice rising with each loss. Jiho's targeting computer locked onto a Velthara destroyer. He fired both plasma cannons. Watched the bolts streak across space. Watched them splash harmlessly against the enemy's shields. This is useless, his co-pilot said. We need to run. Run where? Jiho asked. The patrol craft beside them exploded. No warning. No time to react. One moment it was there. The next, it was debris, spreading across space. Jiho had known the pilot, a woman named Kyungsu, who made terrible jokes and collected antique music recordings. All craft, focus fire on the lead destroyer, Commander Sung ordered. Maybe we can break through their shields. The remaining patrol craft converged, all firing at once. For a moment, Jiho thought it might work. The Velthara destroyer's shields flickered, weakened. Then a battlecruiser moved to support it, and return fire swept through the patrol craft formation. 2 more ships died. Then another. Jiho's craft took a hit that sent them spinning. Alarms screamed. The co-pilot was slumped over his controls, blood floating in zero gravity. Jiho, eject! Commander Sung's voice crackled through failing communications. Get to an escape pod. That's an order. Sir, the colony is already lost. Save yourself. Someone needs to survive. To tell Earth what happened here. Jiho looked at his screens. The Velthara fleet was moving into bombardment positions around New Haven. The last defense platform exploded silently in the distance. His own ship was dying. Engines offline. Life support failing. He pulled the emergency eject lever. The escape pod fired him away from the patrol craft. Just as it exploded behind him, the pod's small thruster pushed him toward the planet, toward home, even as hell descended from above. Down on New Haven, the evacuation sirens were wailing. Salmon stood in her classroom, hurrying her students toward the underground shelters. She had 23 children under her care, ages 6 to 8, all of them frightened and crying. It's okay, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. We're just going to take a field trip underground. Remember when we learned about the emergency shelters? We get to see them for real. Raver. A little girl named Ji Woo clutched Salmon's hand. Where's my mommy? She'll meet us at the shelter, sweetie. Come on, everyone stay together. The first orbital strike hit 3 kilometers away. The ground shook. Dust fell from the classroom ceiling. Children screamed. Run, Salmon shouted, abandoning her calm pretense. Run to the shelters now. They ran through corridors filled with panicking colonists. Families clutched each other. Old and young stumbled together toward the underground entrances. The shelter doors were massive, designed to withstand anything short of a direct hit. Salmon got her students to the entrance. She counted them, making sure all 23 were there. 23 frightened faces, looking up at her for protection. Go inside, she told them. Find your families. I need to help others. Don't leave us, Jiwoo cried. I'll be right back, I promise. She lied. She knew she lied. But she couldn't just hide while others needed help. Salmon ran back toward the school. Other teachers were still evacuating students. Younger children who couldn't run fast. Disabled students who needed assistance. She grabbed a boy in a wheelchair and pushed him toward the shelter. The second strike hit the medical center. Dr. Yoonji Park was there, working frantically to evacuate patients. She had gotten young Hyun-woo into an escape pod with other children, programmed it to launch automatically if the medical center took damage. Now, she was helping an elderly man on life support toward the emergency transports. The explosion was massive. The medical center's fusion reactor went critical. The blast wave expanded at supersonic speed. Well, with possible, Hyun-woo's escape pod launched automatically, shooting up through the chaos. Inside, children cried and held each other. Hyun-woo pressed his face against the small window, watching his home burn below. In orbit, Jiho's escape pod drifted helplessly. His radio picked up fragments of communications, screams, prayers, last messages from people who knew they were about to die. Governor Lee's voice came through, stronger than the rest, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Governor Min-ho Lee of New Haven Colony. To anyone who receives this message, know what happened here today. The Velthara attacked without warning. They targeted civilians. They murdered children. They gave us no chance to surrender. We die now. But remember us. Remember New Haven. Remember what they did. Make them pay. The transmission cut off as the governor's office vaporized. The Velthara bombardment was systematic. They didn't just hit military targets. They glassed the entire planet. Orbital kinetic strikes hit at relativistic speeds, releasing energy equal to nuclear weapons. Plasma beams carved lines of fire across continents. Cities became craters. Farms became ash. The twin moons looked down on hell itself. Salmon never made it back to the shelter. The school took a direct hit while she was inside, helping a group of students trapped in a collapsed stairwell. She died instantly, along with the children she was trying to save. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it finally stopped, New Haven was a smoking ruin. The atmosphere was choked with ash. The oceans boiled. Everything that had been built over 15 years was erased in an afternoon. Of the 340,000 people who had called New Haven home, only 847 survived. They floated in emergency escape pods, scattered across the system, watching their world burn. Jiho's pod was among them. He stared at the ruins of his home, at the place where Salmon had died, where his future had burned. The ring he had given her was now ash. The life they would have built together was gone. He didn't cry. He was too numb for tears. He just floated in the darkness, watching the smoke rise from his dead world. 3 days later, a merchant vessel picked up the survivors. Jiho and little Hyunwoo were pulled aboard together. The boy was catatonic, staring at nothing. He had watched his mother die from space. He had lost everything. The merchant captain was an old man named Dongwoo. He looked at the survivors with horror and pity. What happened down there? Quote, "The Velthara," Jiho said quietly. "They killed everyone. They didn't want prisoners or surrender. They just wanted us dead. I want that." Why? Jiho had no answer. There was no answer. The Velthara had attacked because they could, because they saw humans as weak, because they wanted to send a message. The merchant ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying the survivors toward Earth. Behind them, New Haven continued to burn, and in the depths of space, the Velthara fleet broadcast their attack across the galaxy. A warning to all human colonies. A declaration of their power. A promise of more death to come. The footage reached Earth 6 days after the massacre. The merchant vessel had transmitted it as soon as they entered communication range. By the time they docked at Earth's orbital station, the entire planet had seen what happened to New Haven. The Council of Nations convened in emergency session. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the vast chamber. Translators worked frantically as arguments erupted in dozens of languages. But beneath the chaos, there was unity. A cold, furious unity that humanity had not known since the early colony wars. Admiral Taejin Song stood before the council. He was 61 years old, gray-haired, and stern-faced. He had commanded fleets during the Proxima conflicts, had negotiated peace with hostile species, had spent 40 years serving humanity among the stars. His sister and her family had lived on New Haven. They were among the dead. "Show them," Admiral Song said quietly. The chamber lights dimmed. Holographic displays filled the air, showing New Haven before the attack. Children playing in the plaza. Farmers harvesting crops. Dr. Eunji Park treating patients at the medical center. Governor Lee giving his anniversary speech about peace and cooperation. Then, the attack. The orbital bombardment. Cities burning. Escape pods launching while the world died below them. The footage was raw, unedited, captured by dozens of survivors. It showed everything. A child's scream echoed through the council chamber. Not from the footage, but from a delegate who broke down watching it. Others were crying. Some sat in stunned silence. A few looked ready to commit violence. 340,000 civilians, Admiral Song said. Murdered. Not soldiers. Not threats. Families. Children. People who chose peace over war. The Velthara killed them all, and broadcast it as a warning. He paused, looking at each delegate in turn. They want us to abandon our colonies. They want us to retreat to Earth like frightened animals. They want us to accept that human life means nothing to them. The chamber erupted into shouting. Demands for retaliation. Calls for war. But also voices urging caution. Warning about escalation. Arguing for diplomatic solutions. A delegate from the European Union stood. If we respond with violence, we become what they are. We must seek peaceful resolution. Admiral Song's voice cut through the noise like a knife. They vaporized a hospital. They targeted schools. They killed 340,000 people who never raised a weapon against them. There is no peaceful resolution with genocide. We could negotiate. With what? Our fear? Our weakness? Admiral Song's hands clenched at his sides. They sent us a message. It's time we send one back. Another delegate spoke up, from the Asian coalition. What do you propose, Admiral? Total War Protocol. The chamber went silent. Total War Protocol had never been invoked. It meant complete military mobilization. Every shipyard working at maximum capacity. Mandatory conscription. The entire economy shifted to war production. It meant humanity would commit everything to destroying the enemy. That's genocide, someone protested. No, Admiral Song said coldly. Genocide is what happened to New Haven. This is justice. This is survival. This is showing the galaxy that human blood has a price. The vote took 4 hours. It was the shortest debate for a declaration of war in UN history. When the results came in, they were unanimous. Every nation, every delegate, every representative of humanity voted yes. Total War Protocol was authorized. Within hours, the mobilization began. Military recruitment centers opened across Earth and every human colony. The response was overwhelming. 40 million volunteers in the first week. People who had never considered military service stood in line for days to enlist. Private Heejin Bei was 20 years old. She had been studying literature at university, dreaming of becoming a writer. She watched the New Haven footage in her dorm room and immediately left for the recruitment center. She didn't tell her parents. She just went. The recruiting sergeant looked at her small frame and delicate hands. You sure about this? Kid, show me where to sign, Heijin said. This isn't a game. We're going to war. Real war. People will die. People already died. 340,000 of them. I'm going to make sure the Velthara pay for every single one. The sergeant nodded and handed her the forms. Across human space, shipyards that had been building merchant vessels and colony ships switched to military production. The designs were brutal and efficient. No comfort, no luxury, just weapons and armor and engines, ships that could kill. Captain Daehyun Kang watched the supercarrier times, retribution times take shape in the orbital yards above Mars. He was 44 years old, humanity's most decorated officer, and he had been recalled from retirement to command this vessel. The time's retribution times was massive, larger than anything humanity had ever built. It could carry 500 fighters and house 20,000 crew. She's beautiful, his executive officer said. She's a weapon. Daehyun corrected. Beautiful is the wrong word. Necessary is better. The survivors of New Haven were scattered across Earth, trying to rebuild their lives. Jiho had been promoted to commander and assigned to Admiral Song's staff. They wanted his first-hand knowledge of the attack, his tactical insights, his rage. Young Hyunwoo lived with Jiho now. The boy rarely spoke. He drew pictures constantly, filling notebook after notebook with images from his memory. The burning medical center, his mother's face, the escape pod launching, the twin moons looking down on hell. A child psychologist tried to help. Healthy, Jiho repeated bitterly. He's 8 years old, and he watched his entire world die. There's nothing healthy about that. But the drawings became important. Someone on Admiral Song's staff saw them and recognized their value. Within a week, Hyunwoo's artwork was being reproduced on recruiting posters. Asterisk. Remember. New Haven. Asterisk. Asterisk. Never forgotten. Asterisk. Asterisk. Make them pay. Asterisk. The images spread across Earth and every colony. That simple drawing of twin moons over a burning world became the symbol of humanity's rage. Commander Yuna Han worked in naval intelligence. She was 32 years old, brilliant and ruthless. Her job was to plan the counterattack. Not just a battle plan, but a strategy for complete victory. She presented her proposal to Admiral Song in his office overlooking Earth. We don't just defeat them. We break them. Every military installation, every shipyard, every weapons facility. We take away their ability to wage war forever. That will take years, Admiral Song said. Months, if we commit fully. The Velthara have 73 major military installations across 18 systems. We hit them simultaneously, overwhelming their ability to respond. Casualties? Theirs will be massive. Ours will be acceptable. Admiral Song studied the battle plans, system after system targeted for assault. Fleets positioned for maximum devastation. It was brutal, efficient, and utterly without mercy. The Council will question the ethics, he said. The Council voted for total war protocol. They knew what that meant. Commander Yuna Han met his eyes. The Velthara chose this. They attacked civilians. They made human life meaningless. Now we show them the cost of that choice. Admiral Song approved the plan. The fleet assembled over Earth. 2,000 warships, battle cruisers, carriers, destroyers, frigates, support vessels. The largest military force humanity had ever created. They hung in orbit like a steel cloud, blocking out the stars. Jiho stood in the observation deck of the command station, watching the fleet gather. Beside him, young Hyunwoo pressed his face against the window. Are they going to fight the bad aliens? The boy asked quietly, the first words he had spoken in days. Yes, Jiho said. Good. Hyunwoo's small hand clenched into a fist. I want them to hurt. Quote, Jiho felt a chill. The boy was 8 years old and filled with hate. What kind of future was that? But then, he thought of Saman, of the ring that had burned with her, of the life they should have had. He felt the same hate burning in his own chest. They will hurt, Jiho promised. They'll hurt more than they ever imagined. The launch day arrived. Admiral Song broadcast a message to the fleet and to Earth below. Soldiers of humanity. We stand at the edge of war. Not a war we chose, but one forced upon us by an enemy who believes we are weak. They murdered our families. They destroyed our homes. They thought we would retreat in fear. His voice hardened. They were wrong. Today we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. We are peace-loving, but we are not helpless. We are forgiving, but we do not forget. Touch our colonies, murder our people, and face the full fury of humanity unleashed. 2,000 ships began moving. Their engines ignited, turning the night sky over Earth bright as day. They formed up, dividing into battle groups, each one assigned to a specific target. The Times Retribution Times led the main fleet. Captain Dae-hyun Kang sat in the command chair, watching his tactical displays. Around him, his crew worked with focused intensity. All ships report ready, his executive officer said. Then let's go remind the Velthara why you don't attack humanity. Dae-hyun gave the order. Jump. The fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Humanity had been wounded, but now, humanity would strike back with everything it had. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of 3 different systems simultaneously. The Velthara had no warning. One moment, their border outposts were quiet. The next, they were under attack. By hundreds of warships, The first strike hit Outpost Kethrin, a military station orbiting a dead moon. Commander Yuna Han had chosen the targets carefully. These were not civilian locations. They were military installations, weapons depots, training centers, places where the Velthara war machine operated. The attack was brutal and efficient. 50 human destroyers appeared in formation and opened fire immediately. Their railguns sent streams of metal slugs through space at tremendous speed. Missiles launched by the hundreds, their engines burning bright against the darkness. The Velthara defenders scrambled to respond. But they were designed to fight off raids and pirates, not a full military assault. Their shields collapsed under the sustained barrage. Hull plating shattered. Atmosphere vented into space. In 18 minutes, Outpost Kethrin was debris. The second strike hit a weapons facility on the moon of Dracus. This was where the Velthara manufactured their plasma cannons and missile systems. A ground assault team led by newly promoted Corporal Heijin Bei dropped from orbit in armored pods. The pods streaked through the thin atmosphere, heat shields glowing red. Anti-aircraft fire reached up from the facility, trying to knock them down. 3 pods exploded, their crews dying before they touched ground. Heijin's pod landed hard, the impact jarring her teeth. "Move, move, move!" her sergeant shouted. They poured out of the pods wearing power armor, carrying weapons designed to punch through Velthara armor. The facility's defenders were ready, reptilian soldiers taking cover behind barricades and automated turrets. The battle was vicious and close range. Heijin fired her rifle in controlled bursts, watching Velthara soldiers fall. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, just cold determination. These aliens had murdered civilians. Now they faced soldiers. A plasma bolt caught her squad leader, burning through his armor. He went down screaming. Heijin grabbed a grenade, threw it over the barricade, and dove for cover as it exploded. When she looked up, the Velthara position was smoking rubble. "Keep moving," she shouted, surprised to find herself giving orders. "Push through to the main facility." The humans fought their way through defensive lines. Their armor was heavier, their weapons more precise. The Velthara were fierce warriors, but they were facing an enemy with better technology and infinite rage. The weapons facility was destroyed in 4 hours. Heijin stood in the ruins, covered in dust and blood, looking at the destruction around her. Velthara bodies lay scattered among the wreckage. Some were soldiers. Some were technicians who had grabbed weapons when the attack started. "Good work, Corporal," her company commander said. "You saved your squad back there." Heijin said nothing. She just reloaded her rifle and prepared for the next fight. The third strike was the largest. Captain Daehyun Kang led the Time's Retribution Times and her battle group toward Kalthor Station, the biggest Velthara military outpost in the border region. The station was massive, capable of housing 50,000 personnel and serving as a repair dock for capital ships. Sensors show 90 Velthara warships defending the station, the tactical officer reported. "Good," Daehyun said. "More targets." The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in attack formation. The Times, Retribution Times, was at the center, surrounded by escorts and support ships. They had brought 400 vessels against the Velthara 90. The battle began immediately. The Velthara fleet moved to intercept, their commanders confident in their fortified position. They had fought humans before, in small skirmishes. They expected caution, measured responses, perhaps retreat in the face of superior defenses. They got total war instead. The human fleet opened fire at maximum range. Missiles filled space between the two forces. Thousands of them. More than the Velthara point defense systems could possibly handle. The first wave was mostly destroyed, but the second wave got through. Velthara shields flared under the impacts. Ships broke formation, trying to evade. The human fleet kept coming, closing the distance, their railguns now in range. Solid metal slugs traveling at a fraction of light speed struck Velthara hulls with devastating force. One frigate simply came apart, torn into pieces by the kinetic impact. Their flagship is trying to withdraw, the tactical officer said. Don't let it. Daehyun ordered. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. Fighter craft launched from the Time's Retribution asterisk, hundreds of small ships swarming toward the Velthara flagship. Their job wasn't to destroy it, but to cripple its engines. Precision strikes, surgically removing the ship's ability to escape. Commander Jiho watched the battle from the Fleet Command Center. He was analyzing the Velthara tactics, looking for patterns, weaknesses. His tactical screens showed the entire engagement in real time. The flagship is breaking away from its escorts, he reported to Admiral Song. If we hit it now with our heavy cruisers, we can force a surrender. Do it, Admiral Song said. 3 heavy cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the Velthara flagship. Their main guns fired in sequence. Massive particle beams that could cut through a moon. The flagship's shields collapsed under the assault. Its engines exploded. The massive ship went dead in space, drifting and helpless. They're signaling surrender, the communications officer said. Denied, Admiral Song said coldly. Target their bridge. Sir, they're trying to surrender. They showed no mercy to New Haven. They get none from us. Admiral Song's voice was ice. Fire. The particle beams struck the flagship's command section. The explosion was visible even through the chaos of battle. The Velthara flagship died with all hands, its surrender ignored. Jiho felt a chill. He understood the order, understood the rage behind it. But watching a ship full of enemies die while trying to surrender felt wrong somehow. Then he thought of Salmon, of the children who died in her school, of the colonists who had no chance to surrender. Maybe wrong was what they deserved. The Battle of Kalthor Station lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the station was a shattered hulk. 90 Velthara warships were reduced to 23 survivors, who managed to retreat. The human fleet lost 14 ships with another 31 damaged. But the station was destroyed, and the Velthara had learned a terrible lesson. Humans didn't fight like the other species they had encountered. Humans didn't do limited warfare or territorial skirmishes. Humans went for total victory. News of the attacks spread through Velthara space like fire. 3 major installations destroyed in one day. Thousands of their soldiers dead. The humans, who they had dismissed as weak mammals, had struck with overwhelming force. Warlord Tharok, the commander who had ordered the New Haven massacre, received reports in his command center on the Varaxis system. This was his territory, his command, his responsibility. He had expected the humans to protest, maybe send a small retaliatory strike. He had not expected total war. How many ships do they have? He demanded. Intelligence suggests over 2,000. Warlord. Our border forces are outnumbered everywhere. Tharok's claws scraped against his command throne. 2,000 ships. The Velthara had maybe 600 in this entire sector. The humans had mobilized everything. They're coming here next, he said. Prepare defenses. Whatever happens, we hold Varaxis. It's the gateway to our core systems. The Varaxis system was indeed strategic. It contained shipyards, training facilities, and supply depots. Losing it would cripple Velthara military operations in the entire border region. The human fleet arrived 3 days later. Admiral Song stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Varaxis system grow larger on the tactical displays. Warlord Tharok was here. The monster who had ordered the attack on New Haven, the alien who had killed Salmon and Dr. Park and Governor Lee, and 340,000 others. Sensors show significant defenses, his tactical officer reported. Orbital platforms, minefields, at least 80 warships in defensive positions. How long until we're in weapons range? 30 minutes. Admiral Song opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Song. The target is the Butcher of New Haven. We show him the same mercy he showed our people. None. Engage at will when in range. Song out. Jiho coordinated the tactical approach. directing squadrons to specific targets. He felt strangely calm now. This was what he had trained for. This was why he had survived when so many others died. To be here, at this moment, bringing justice to New Haven. The human fleet split into attack groups. They came at Varaxis from multiple angles, forcing the defenders to divide their attention. The orbital platforms opened fire first. Long-range missiles streaking toward the human ships. Counter-missiles launched from the human fleet, intercepting most of the incoming weapons. Those that got through splashed against shields or were destroyed by point defense guns. Then the human fleet returned fire, and hell came to Varaxis. The Battle of Varaxis was not glorious. It was systematic extermination. Human railguns fired in rotating volleys, maintaining constant pressure on Velthara shields. Missiles came in waves. Each wave, learning from the one before. Fighter craft swarmed like angry insects, targeting weapons emplacements and shield generators. The human fleet worked with mechanical precision, breaking down the Velthara defenses, piece by piece. Warlord Tharok watched his forces die from his flagship command center. His orbital platforms were gone in the first hour. His defensive fleet was being carved apart by superior numbers and tactics. The humans fought with cold efficiency. No wasted shots, no unnecessary risks. They were methodical and terrifying. "Pull back to the shipyards," he ordered. "We make our stand there." His remaining ships retreated to the massive orbital construction facilities. The shipyards had their own defenses, and maybe the humans would hesitate to destroy such valuable infrastructure. Maybe they could be reasoned with. The human fleet followed without slowing. Captain Dehun commanded the time's retribution times from the center of the formation. His tactical displays showed the Velthara ships clustering around the shipyards, using the structures as cover. "They think we won't fire on the yards," his executive officer said. "They're wrong." Daehyun opened communications with the fleet. "All ships, weapons free. Destroy everything. All effin. Daehyun, all effin, all rever." The human ships opened fire on the shipyards. Particle beams carved through construction gantries. Missiles struck half-finished warships in their assembly cradles. Explosions rippled through the facilities as fuel stores and ammunition depots detonated. Commander Jiho tracked Warlord Tharok's flagship through the chaos. The massive vessel was trying to escape toward the outer system, abandoning its defending forces. Jiho coordinated with 3 destroyer squadrons to cut off the escape route. "Target the engines," he transmitted. "I want that ship disabled." The destroyers moved with perfect coordination, their railguns firing in sequence. The flagship's aft shields collapsed. Explosions bloomed along its engine section. The great vessel shuddered and began to spin, its propulsion systems destroyed. "He's launching an escape pod," the sensor operator reported. Admiral Song's voice came through immediately. Jiho dispatched a hunter-killer squadron. Small, fast ships designed for pursuit. They caught up to the escape pod within minutes, tractoring it aboard one of the destroyers. Warlord Tharok found himself dragged from the pod by human soldiers. He expected torture, interrogation, the brutality his people would have shown. Instead, he was taken to a holding cell and left alone. Hours passed. He sat in silence, contemplating his failure. Finally, Admiral Song came to see him. The human admiral stood outside the energy barrier of the cell, studying the Velthara warlord with cold eyes. "You killed 340,000 of my people," Admiral Song said quietly. Tharok straightened, trying to maintain his dignity. "It was war. Your colony was in our territory. It was murder. Children were murdered. Hospitals were destroyed. You gave no warning, no chance to surrender. Your species is weak. We were showing you the price of expansion into our space." Admiral Song was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's rage. "You wanted to show us what happens when we meet the Velthara. Now we will show you what happens when you meet humanity. What you did to one colony, we will do to your entire military. Every ship, every station, every facility that makes war possible. And when we're done, your empire will remember forever the cost of touching human lives. You cannot. We already have. 3 outposts destroyed. Kalthor Station gone. Varaxis shipyards burning. And we're just getting started. Admiral Song turned to leave, then paused. Your trial will be held on Earth. You will face every single name from New Haven. All 340,000. And then, you will be executed for war crimes. Tharok watched the Admiral walk away. For the first time in his life, the Velthara warlord felt true fear. News of Varaxis spread through the Velthara Empire faster than light itself. The humans had destroyed their biggest forward base. Warlord Tharok was captured. The shipyards that built their fleet were rubble. The Velthara High Council convened an emergency session on their homeworld. The council chamber was ancient, carved from black stone, decorated with the trophies of 1,000 conquered worlds. But today, the councillors felt no pride in their history. We must negotiate, Councillor Thessa said. She was one of the few who had argued against attacking New Haven. Now her warnings seemed prophetic. Negotiate? Another councillor hissed. Show weakness? To mammals? They have shown us they are not weak. They have shown us they are willing to wage total war. We must sue for peace before they reach our core systems. The humans won't stop, a military advisor said grimly. Our intelligence shows their fleet is larger than we estimated. They're attacking on multiple fronts. We're losing ground everywhere. The council descended into argument. Pride and fear warred within them. To seek peace would be admitting the humans were their equals, maybe their superiors, but to continue fighting might mean the extinction of their empire. While the council debated, the human campaign continued. Operation Steel Rain began 3 weeks after Varaxis. Human Marines dropped onto 23 Velthara military worlds simultaneously. They came in assault pods, power armor bristling with weapons, backed by orbital fire support. Corporal Heejin Bay led her squad onto the surface of Drakon 4, a training facility for Velthara ground forces. Her pod smashed through the roof of a barracks building, and her squad came out fighting. The battle was short and brutal. The Velthara cadets were young and inexperienced, still in training. Heejin's veterans moved through them like a storm, weapons firing in precise bursts. She tried not to think about the fact that these were barely adults, possibly younger than her. They had a mission: destroy the command center and weapons depot. Nothing else mattered. Her squad fought their way through the facility. Every corridor was a battle. Every room a potential ambush. But they pushed forward, relentless and unstoppable. They reached the command center to find Velthara officers trying to evacuate. Heijin's sergeant opened fire, cutting them down before they reached the transport. She felt sick watching it but didn't stop shooting. Rig the charges, the sergeant ordered. Blow this place back to the Stone Age. Heijin placed explosive charges on the main computer systems, the communications arrays, the data storage. Everything that made this facility function was marked for destruction. They evacuated to a safe distance and triggered the charges. The command center exploded in a fireball that could be seen from orbit. Similar scenes played out across 23 worlds. Human forces struck with overwhelming violence, destroyed their targets, and withdrew before Velthara reinforcements could arrive. It was guerrilla warfare on a massive scale, coordinated across multiple systems. The Velthara military couldn't respond effectively. Their forces were scattered, defending too many locations. Every time they concentrated troops, the humans struck somewhere else. Every time they tried to predict the next target, they guessed wrong. Meanwhile, the main human fleet continued its advance. The siege of Drakon Yards saw humanity's largest battlecruisers reduce the Velthara's primary shipbuilding facility to debris in 14 hours. Thousands of Velthara shipyard workers died when the facilities were destroyed. Captain Dae-hyun watched from the Time's retribution times as the last structures exploded. He felt no satisfaction, only tired resignation. This was necessary. This was what happened when you attacked humanity. But it didn't feel righteous or good. It just felt like more death. Sir, we're receiving communications from civilian vessels, his communications officer reported. Velthara families trying to evacuate the yards before we attacked. They're requesting mercy. Dae-hyun closed his eyes. This was the moment commanders dreaded. The moment when you had to choose between orders and conscience. Bring them aboard, he said. Medical teams to the hangar bays. Make sure they're treated well. Sir, the Admiral's orders are to destroy military targets. Those are civilians. We bring them aboard. The Time's retribution times took on 300 Velthara refugees. They were terrified, expecting execution. Instead, they were given food, medical care, and safe quarters. The human crew treated them with professional distance, but no cruelty. Word of this spread too. The humans were destroying military forces with ruthless efficiency, but sparing civilians when possible. This confused the Velthara. Their military doctrine had no concept of this kind of warfare. You either showed mercy to everyone or no one. More Velthara civilians began surrendering to human forces. Some even provided intelligence about military installations. The fabric of Velthara society began to crack under the pressure. The Cathara blockade was the final blow. Commander Yunahan coordinated a massive operation to surround an entire Velthara sector, cutting off supply lines and reinforcements. The trapped military forces had three options: break through with massive casualties, starve slowly, or surrender. 50,000 Velthara soldiers chose surrender. Back on Earth, Jiho visited young Hyunwoo in their small apartment. The boy was still drawing, still processing his trauma through art. But his pictures had changed. He was drawing human ships now, powerful and strong. He was drawing Velthara soldiers with their hands raised in surrender. Are we winning? Hyunwoo asked. Yes, Jiho said. We're winning. Good. The boy continued drawing. Will they pay for what they did to Mom? Jiho thought of Warlord Tharak in his cell, awaiting trial. He thought of the thousands of Velthara soldiers dead across dozens of worlds. He thought of the shipyards burning and the military machine crumbling. They're paying, he said quietly. They're paying every day. On Velthar Prime, the homeworld of the Empire, Counselor Thessa finally convinced enough of her colleagues to seek peace. The vote was close, but it passed. A message was sent to the human fleet, requesting negotiations. Admiral Song received the message in his command center. He read it twice, then called his senior staff together. They want to negotiate, he said. We should accept, Commander Yunahan said immediately. We've accomplished our strategic objectives. Their military is broken. We haven't reached their homeworld yet, another officer argued. We could end this completely. Admiral Song looked at the star map showing Velthara space. So many systems, so many worlds. And in the center, Velthar Prime, with its billions of civilians. He thought of New Haven. He thought of his sister's family, buried under the ashes of their home. He thought of justice and revenge, and the difference between the two. Send them our terms, he said finally. Unconditional surrender of all military forces, war crime trials for those responsible for New Haven, and complete demilitarization of their empire. He paused. But we will spare their homeworld. The message was sent. The wait for a response began, and the human fleet prepared to jump to Velthar Prime, ready to finish what the Velthara had started. The Velthara commander tilted his head, studying the governor like a predator studying prey. When he spoke, his voice was cold and final. Your species ends here. The transmission cut off. On the radar screens, the Velthara fleet was accelerating toward New Haven. Jiho felt ice in his stomach. He thought of Somin, probably still at the plaza. He thought of little Hyunwoo Park and his toy starship. He thought of the 340,000 people who had chosen this world because they wanted peace. "All hands to battle stations," Commander Sung said quietly. "May God have mercy on us all." The celebration lanterns still glowed in the plaza outside, swaying in the breeze, while death approached from the stars above.